Thanks for tuning in and welcome to the Gnostic Connection. I'm your host, metaphysical detective Damien Sebuhian. As a metaphysical detective, my role for each show is to investigate a specific topic of interest, uncover its inner wisdom, and share with you, the listener, my findings. Feel free to accept, reject, or modify my findings as you see fit. For today's episode, I will be making the Gnostic Connection with Shadow Work, Uncovering Coratopia. In fact, many future Gnostic Connection shows will be focusing on the practice of shadow work. Some episodes I will be going solo, some I will be in conversation with other shadow work practitioners, but for today is a solo show where I'll be discussing the concepts, attributes, and practical tools of conducting shadow work and how I've crystallized some of those concepts and tools within my single-player adventure role-playing game designed as the ultimate guidebook for shadow work titled Coratopia. If there are any therapists or life coaches, healers, or non-professional practitioners out there who use shadow work as a featured modality, please reach out. I would love to invite you onto the show for a sacred one-on-one conversation about what you do and how you do it. I can be reached via the KLLG email address 979klLG@klLG.org. That's 979klLG@klLG.org.
The shadow is a moral problem that challenges the whole ego personality, for no one can become conscious of the shadow without considerable moral effort. To become conscious of it involves recognizing the dark aspects of the personality as present and real. This act is the essential condition for any kind of self-knowledge, and it therefore, as a rule, meets with considerable resistance. Indeed, self-knowledge as a psychotherapeutic measure frequently requires much painstaking work extending over a long period of time. Carl Jung. All those qualities, capacities, and tendencies which do not harmonize with the collective values, everything that shuns the light of public opinion, in fact, now come together to form the shadow, that dark region of the personality which is unknown and unrecognized by the ego. Depth Psychology in a New Ethic by Eric Newman.
What if I told you there's a way to heal yourself and transform the world at the same time? That's exactly what shadow work does. Shadow work is like becoming a detective for your soul. You're tracking down the parts of yourself you've been hiding from, the anger, the shame, the fears you've stuffed into the basement of your psyche. But here's the thing, you are not hunting these shadow parts to destroy them. You're bringing them into the light so they can finally be healed. When we do this work individually, something magical happens collectively. We start shifting our entire culture away from fear-based thinking, you know, that us versus them power mentality, and toward genuine, heart-centered living. That's the real prize here, folks. Now, let's be honest, traditional shadow work can feel about as fun as a root canal. It's intimidating, it's messy, and let's face it, who wants to spend their evening confronting their darkest impulses? Even those of us on the spiritual path sometimes prefer the comfortable illusion that we're already enlightened rather than doing the gritty work of examination of our own shadows. That's where Coratopia comes in. I've taken all that heavy, intimidating shadow work and transformed it into something revolutionary. A role-playing game that makes the shadow work actually fun to play. From shadow work to shadow play. Think of it as leveling up your consciousness while having a blast doing it. And here's what I love most. Just like any good RPG, you can actually track your progress in Coratopia. You get to see yourself growing, changing, becoming more whole. This isn't just feel-good stuff, people. This is creativity meeting practical application, meeting real, measurable results. So, when you're having fun playing Coratopia, that's not a sign you're doing it wrong. That's your signal that the transformation is actually working. So, let's get to it, shall we?
The persona is the mask we wear in relation to the world and others. It is created through a combination of socialization, societal expectations, one's experience of the world, and the natural attributes and tendencies of the individual. It combines elements of how we want to see ourselves ideally, and how we want the world to see us, as well as how the world does see us and wants us to be. Our persona defines our social identity. It is constructed in relation to the roles we play in our lives and in our world, how we want to look and be seen. It is the face we wear to be presentable and acceptable to our society. It is not necessarily who we really are, but who we want and pretend to be to others and, many times, to ourselves. War of the Gods and Addiction by David Schoen.
Let's begin with a fundamental truth. We all have aspects of ourselves that remain hidden from our consciousness, from our conscious awareness. The man most famous for the concept and practice of shadow work was Carl Gustav Jung. Jung was a Swiss psychiatrist and psychoanalyst born on July 26, 1875 in Kassel, Switzerland, and he died on June 6, 1961. He founded analytical psychology, developed concepts such as the collective unconscious and archetypes, and had a significant influence on psychology, literature, and religious studies. Jung emphasized that everyone has a shadow, which represents the hidden, repressed parts of our personality. He believed that acknowledging and integrating these aspects is essential for personal growth, stating, "By not being aware of having a shadow, you declare a part of yourself to be non-existent, leading to greater inner conflict and disconnection from oneself." The shadow represents a psychological underworld made up of repressed feelings, denied urges, old wounds, and distorted beliefs. These are not bad parts of us, they are simply unseen. And what remains unseen tends to rule us from the background, often sabotaging our growth, relationships, and self-worth. Picture the person who prides themselves on being always positive, but finds themselves cutting down others behind their backs, then immediately justifying it as just being honest or trying to help. Or consider the individual who sees themselves as deeply spiritual and compassionate, yet when they snap at a cashier or feel secretly pleased when a rival fails, they quickly dismiss these moments as not the real me or just having a bad day. We create these sanitized self-images, the perpetual peacemaker, the selfless giver, the enlightened soul, that conveniently exclude our capacity for jealousy, pettiness, or cruelty. When our shadow inevitably surfaces through gossip, passive aggression, or schadenfreude, we scramble to preserve our idealistic self-concept with thoughts like, "I would never deliberately hurt someone. Only toxic people do that, and I'm clearly not toxic." This denial doesn't make the shadow disappear. It just drives it underground, where it operates through unconscious sabotage, mysterious relationship conflicts, or that nagging sense that others just don't understand our pure intentions. Jung understood that by declaring these natural human tendencies non-existent in ourselves, we split our psyche and hand our power over to the very forces we refuse to acknowledge. Shadow work is the sacred act of reclaiming our power by making the unconscious conscious. It's about reclaiming exiled parts of ourselves, witnessing them with compassion, and integrating them into a fuller, more authentic self. Coratopia makes this process accessible, structured, and immersively creative. In Coratopia, the player character does metaphorical battle with his shadows, not for the purpose of destroying them, but first by turning the battle into a dance, and then the shadow into an aeon. Aeon is a Greek word for angel or being of light.
The enlargement of the light side of consciousness has the necessary consequence that the part of the psyche which is less light and less capable of consciousness is thrown into darkness to such an extent that sooner or later a rift occurs in the psychic system. At first, this is not recognized as such and is therefore projected, i.e., it appears as a religious projection in the form of a split between the powers of light and darkness. The Symbolism of the Spirit, Carl Jung.
So why do any of this? Why journal our grief, interrogate our fears, wrestle your old thought patterns, or sit with your discomfort instead of just manifesting good vibes and calling it a day? Because what waits on the other side of this work is power. Not power over others, but power with your whole self. Power through the integration of your darkness and your light.
The situation which is more common and more familiar to the average man is that in which the ego identifies itself with the ethical values. The identification takes place by means of an identification of the ego with the persona. The ego confuses itself with the facade personality, which is, of course, in reality only that part of the personality that is tailored to fit the collective, and forgets that it possesses aspects which run counter to the persona. This means that the ego has repressed the shadow side and lost touch with the dark contents, which are negative and for this reason split off from the conscious sector. A psychological approach to the dogma of the Trinity, Carl Jung.
The shadow is represented in popular culture in a myriad of ways. I'll just look at one. Before he integrated a shadow, Bruce Wayne was an aimless, emotionally repressed heir to a billionaire's estate, haunted by the trauma of witnessing as a young boy both of his parents gunned down in an alleyway. In the world of comic book heroes, the origin story of a superhero is never without severe conflict, trauma, and death-defying pain. Bruce Wayne is no different in that respect. Yet, he is different from most superheroes because, unlike nearly all of his peers, he was not granted any superpowers. Rather, Bruce Wayne became the superpower. By sheer force of will, a lot of martial arts training, and all the helpful high-tech gadgetry a billionaire's net worth can afford, Wayne converted his trauma into a single-minded purpose. He did this by confronting one of his most paralyzing of fears, the fear of the bat. Bats live in caves, and their shadow aspects are associated with darkness, the mysteries of evil, vampirism, disease, and, for some, the living embodiment of fear. Bruce Wayne, as legend goes, went into the depths of the psyche and into the literal cave of darkness and emerged with a new, supercharged identity, fully aware of who he was and what he must do. He turned his fear, his nemesis of the bat, into a formidable ally. Who is he? In the words of Bruce Wayne, speaking in the voice of his own unique, fully embodied warrior archetype, I'm Batman. Batman is Bruce Wayne's shadow, but actualized, refined, channeled. His pain becomes purpose. His fear becomes focus. His anger becomes protection. And the costume, the mask, that's not to hide who he is. That's what he becomes when he stops hiding. This is what shadow work is all about. And in Coratopia, this process is not just a metaphor, it's physics. Doing shadow work in the game is how you level up, by courageously exploring the dungeon of your own psyche and reclaiming what was lost, exiled, or misunderstood. You don't defeat your shadows, you recruit them. You transmute them. You make them your allies. In Coratopia, every time you transmute a distorted thought form, emotional pattern, or energetic block, you're not just healing, you're activating. A distorted archontic belief like, I'll never be enough, becomes an ionic embodiment of divine worth. Repressed rage becomes righteous protection and clear boundaries. A wounded sense of shame becomes humility, compassion, and inner strength. Your chronic fear transmutes into intuitive attunement and grounded sovereignty. This process upgrades your in-game avatar, yes, but it also upgrades you. Because Coratopia isn't just a fantasy role-playing game, it's a map for awakening, a sacred mirror. As you play, your inner architecture begins to shift. Where once your inner world was a tangle of hidden wires and crossed signals, unseen emotions and unconscious fears driving your choices, you now stand in clarity. Where once you were stuck in loops, attracted to conditioned positive states and repelled by conditioned negative ones, you now navigate life from your true center. Because once the shadows are named and integrated, they no longer hold you hostage. They no longer rule you from behind the veil. Results from playing Coratopia include psychological breakthroughs, clearer self-understanding, less reactivity and projection, liberation from shame and self-sabotage, stronger emotional regulation and resilience. spiritual expansions, access to higher states of consciousness, alignment with your higher self, reconnection to your soul's mission, and opening of dormant psychic or intuitive abilities. And you'll receive energetic empowerment, chakra balancing and activation, flow states and synchronicities, feeling in your body and on your path, greater energetic boundaries and discernment. And perhaps most importantly, you begin to feel whole again. You stop leaking energy into fear, into pretending, into repression. You stop outsourcing your worth, your voice, and your vision. You become the hero, not the one who slays dragons, but the one who makes peace with them and rides them into the stars. In the world of Coratopia, every shadow you face becomes a potential aeon, a fully transmuted being of light aligned with your soul's purpose. This is your true army, your inner pantheon. These aeons work with you, not against you. They unlock abilities, open realms, protect your path, and help you manifest not from ego, but from essence. So the next time fear whispers to you, the next time shame pulls you inward, the next time an old belief rears up and says, "You can't do this," listen, but don't obey. Instead, lean in, ask, "What are you trying to show me?" Then bring it into the light. Because shadow work isn't punishment, it's initiation. It's the secret passage between the ordinary self and the extraordinary self, between Bruce Wayne and Batman. And in Coratopia, that is your ultimate quest.
Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. At all counts, it forms an unconscious snag, thwarting our most well-meant intention. Carl Jung. In these ways, the personal shadow reinforces, encourages, and becomes dependent upon the addictive behavior to express itself, to have any existence in the light outside of the closet, the attic, and the basement where it has been locked up and hidden for so long. Often the addictive behavior allows the personal shadow the only opportunities to live and to be. The more cut off and unconscious we are of our personal shadows, the more vulnerable we are to having those shadows break out and be set free for a time by addictive behaviors. War of the Gods and Addiction, David Schoen.
Before I delve deeper into all the myriad ways that we can successfully navigate the challenging underworld of shadow work, let me share some more anecdotes and stories from mythology and religion. According to the Gnostic scriptures unearthed in Nag Hammadi, Egypt 80 years ago, this world we inhabit is ruled by what Carl Jung would call the shadow. The Gnostics personified this shadow force and named it the Archons, and the chief Archon they called Yaldabaoth. The Archons represent the shadow aspects of the aeons run amok. Aeons are the same as angels, emanations of the one true creator. In other words, Archons are fallen angels, and Yaldabaoth corresponds to Satan, which is a word that translates as the adversary, or one who plots against another. What sets the Gnostics apart from other religions? The Gnostics provided an in-depth origin story for the adversary, which acts as an ideal metaphor for how humanity has fallen into shadow, and it offers the remedy of how we can emerge from that shadow and take our rightful place within the pure plasmic light of our true beingness. The story of how aeons became archons is told in the Gnostic Gospels, paraphrased and interpreted here. One of the original primordial aeons was Sophia. Sophia is a Greek word for wisdom. Wisdom is a trait that is often gained and enriched due to learning from one's mistakes. In order to learn, you generally must fail a few times. In fact, I would argue that the only actual failure is giving up. As long as you're getting back on that horse, even if you get thrown again and again, you're not failing, you're learning. This dynamic of trying and learning from the mistakes that kept you from fully succeeding is identical to the interplay between wisdom and foolishness, and embodied in the archetype of the wise fool, perfectly epitomized in the zero key of the tarot, known simply as the Fool. Curiosity is the attribute that led source consciousness to know itself in the first place. Thus, curiosity is a trait that's found in all conscious beings. Without curiosity, there would be no progress, no real evolution of consciousness. But, just as is implied by the saying, curiosity killed the cat, there's a dual nature to this universal trait. If I don't accidentally burn myself by the flame, I will never learn what heat is, and if I never learn what heat is, I won't be able to fully utilize its energy. It's that trait of curiosity that leads me to touch the candle's flame, the consequence of which is to feel the pain of getting burned. However, if I let the experience of getting burned create enough fear in me, then I might avoid fire altogether. I will identify fire with trauma, even though there is so much more to fire than can be surmised from my own experience of getting burned. The experience might also dampen my sense of curiosity. As a result, I might transmute my sense of curiosity into an overabundance of caution. Wisdom teaches us that most everything in the material world has a dual nature, and the trick is to find a balance between those dualities. Ideally, we want to keep our curiosity, but we also want to develop a sense of caution about new experiences because our past experiences have informed us that not everything reacts the same way to our interactions with it. Okay, back to Sophia. According to Gnostic cosmology, Sophia, driven by curiosity, decided to create a being without the participation of spirit, or source consciousness. Although such an act would be impossible, because spirit is the fundamental constituent of everything, for the sake of this extended metaphor, I will allow it. Sophia committed the act of creation without spirit. As such, her offspring emerged as a distorted version of consciousness and light. Sophia found it to be a foul creature of selfishness and insatiable greed, and the reason for those distorted traits was due to the lack of divine light within it. If Sophia had created her offspring with the consent of spirit, the sacredly affectionate attention required for that being to thrive would be fully inherited from the essential nature of spirit. It would have been a creature of immense beauty and love. This excerpt comes from the Secret Book of John. When Sophia saw what her desire had produced, it changed into the figure of a snake with the face of a lion. Its eyes were like flashing bolts of lightning. She cast it away from her, outside that realm so that none of the immortals would see it. She had produced it ignorantly. She surrounded it with a bright cloud, and put a throne in the middle of the cloud so that no one would see it except the Holy Spirit, who is called the Mother of the Living. She named her offspring Yaldabaoth. Yaldabaoth is the first ruler who took great power from his mother. Then he left her and moved away from the place where he was born. He took control and created for himself other realms with luminous fire, which still exists. He mated with the mindlessness in him and produced authorities for himself. Because Yaldabaoth was created in ignorance without the consent of the Father, source consciousness, or love, the divine spark is missing within him, and he therefore must steal the divine light as he did from his mother in order to live and to bring forth copies of himself and to copy the upper aeons to create the material universe, which are all things he does. From the Secret Book of John. Yaldabaoth organized everything after the pattern of the first realms that had come into being, as that he might create everything in an incorruptible form. Not that he had seen the incorruptible ones, rather, the power that is in him, that he had taken from his mother, produced in him the pattern for the world order. When he saw creation surrounding him and the throng of angels around him who had come forth from him, he said to them, "I am a jealous God, and there is no other God beside me." But by announcing this, he suggested to the angels with him that there is another God. For if there were no other gods, of whom would he be jealous? Sophia realized her mistake, that she had created Yaldabaoth out of ignorant desire, which is the same as ego desire for us here on earth. It's selfish desire without thought of how that selfishness might impact others. As such, Sophia is triggered into sorrowful tears of regret, shame, and repentance. As a result, quote, "The whole realm of fullness heard her prayer of repentance and offered praise on her behalf to the invisible Virgin Spirit, and the Spirit consented." The Holy Spirit poured upon her some of the fullness of all. He came to her from the realm of fullness, so that he might restore what she lacked. She was taken up not to her own eternal realm, but to a position above her son. She was to remain in the ninth heaven until she restored what was lacking in herself. The story reveals how the shadow emerges when we act from unconscious desire, or ego desire. Sophia's creation, without the consent of spirit, mirrors how our shadow aspects form when we operate from disconnection rather than wholeness. In Jungian terms, this represents the ego's attempt to create meaning and identity while split from the self, the divine totality within us. Yaldabaoth's fundamental lack, his missing divine spark, creates his compulsive need to steal light from others. This perfectly describes shadow behavior. When we're disconnected from our own divine nature, we unconsciously attempt to extract validation, energy, or worth from external sources. The shadow doesn't just hide our negative traits, it represents our distorted relationship with power itself. Yaldabaoth's declaration, "I am a jealous god and there is no other god beside me," while simultaneously revealing his awareness of other gods, captures the shadow's paradoxical nature. Our shadow aspects often manifest as inflated ego states that simultaneously mask deep insecurity. We create entire psychological realms based on these distorted patterns, defensive structures, compensatory behaviors, and false identities that mirror Yaldabaoth's copied creation. The text notes that Yaldabaoth creates after the pattern of the first realms, but not that he had seen the incorruptible ones. This describes how our shadow creates elaborate imitations of authentic spiritual qualities. We might develop pseudo-wisdom, false humility, or counterfeit compassion, shadow versions that serve the ego rather than expressing genuine divine nature. Sophia's recognition of her mistake and subsequent sorrowful tears of regret, shame, and repentance mirrors the crucial recognition phase in shadow work. This isn't self-flagellation, but sacred grief, mourning the ways we've created suffering through unconscious action. Her tears represent the only vulnerability required to see clearly how our unexamined desires have generated distortion. This phase often feels like spiritual crisis because it challenges our fundamental assumptions about ourselves. Yet this breakdown becomes breakthrough when we, like Sophia, turn toward the fullness rather than trying to fix things from the same level of consciousness that created them. The resolution is particularly instructive. Sophia doesn't simply return to her original realm, but is positioned above her son, in the ninth heaven, until she restored what was lacking in herself. This suggests that shadow work isn't about eliminating or transcending our creations, but about establishing right relationship with them from a place of greater consciousness. In practical terms, this means we don't try to destroy our shadow aspects, but learn to parent them with divine love, the sacredly affectionate attention that was missing in their original formation. We become the conscious presence that can hold space for our wounded, grasping parts without being hijacked by them. Perhaps most profound is the implication that Sophia's mistake became the catalyst for an even greater realization. Her fall and restoration suggests that shadow work isn't just about cleaning up psychological debris, but about consciously participating in the cosmic process of bringing light to darkness. Each time we face our shadow with authentic presence rather than spiritual bypassing, we're participating in the same divine alchemy that transforms Yaldabaoth from demiurge to potentially redeemed creation. This reading suggests that our shadows aren't obstacles to spiritual development, but essential partners in it, provided we approach them with the consent of spirit, rather than the ego-driven attempts at quick fixes or premature transcendence.
This thing of darkness, I acknowledge mine. William Shakespeare. This confrontation is the first test of courage on the inner way, a test sufficient to frighten off most people, for the meeting with ourselves belongs to the more unpleasant things that can be avoided so long as we can project everything negative into the environment. But if we are able to see our own shadow and can bear knowing about it, then a small part of the problem has already been solved. We have at least brought up the personal unconscious. The shadow is a living part of the personality, and therefore wants to live with it in some form. It cannot be argued out of existence or rationalized into harmlessness. This problem is exceedingly difficult because it not only challenges the whole man, but reminds him at the same time of his helplessness and ineffectuality. Carl Jung.
In Coratopia, shadow work begins by dividing the ego, the personality, into 4 distinct yet interconnected layers. The first layer is the energetic layer, next is the emotional layer, third is the mental layer, and finally the physical or biological layer, known as the body. For any tarot enthusiasts out there listening, these layers correspond to the 4 suits or elements: wands or fire, cups or water, swords or air, and the pentagram or earth. For the purposes of this show, we'll begin with the emotional layer. Emotions are energies in motion, often messengers from the deeper psyche, but in our culture, we are rarely taught how to name, feel, and understand them. So the first step in the Coratopian process is to map the terrain of your emotional world. Here's how we do it. Begin with free writing. Think of yourself as a 3rd grade student and with your teacher has asked you to write down all the emotions you can think of. Start with positive emotions like joy, excitement, gratitude, then move to negative ones: shame, anger, fear. Finally, write down any neutral or complex emotions: curiosity, confusion, anticipation. Once your brain is empty, it's totally okay to cheat. Open up a search engine and explore lists of emotions to fill in the gaps. Now, read your list out loud. Pay attention to your body's reactions: twinges, tightness, chills, or even emotional surges. Intuition counts here. Circle any emotion that provokes a response. After this first round, read only the circled emotions. Again, notice your responses. The emotions that hit you the hardest, the ones that provoke shame, defensiveness, or denial, circle them a second time. These double-circled emotions are the key holders to your shadow. Choose one to begin with. Ask yourself, what triggers this emotion in me? When did I first begin to feel this way? Was it a single moment or a prolonged pattern? At this point, we aren't confronting the shadow head-on. We're simply investigating and journaling, gathering sacred data. An example from my own life includes the emotion of anger. I mistakenly believed for the longest time that anger was not an issue for me because I very rarely lashed out or lost my temper. I had also made a concerted effort not to be like my father, whose anger issues were overt and oftentimes quite dramatic. A seemingly trivial event would trigger the rage demon, and the rage demon would spew the most vile, hateful epithets, including, "I wish you were never born. You and your brothers have ruined my marriage. We were happy before you came along." Sometimes furniture would get thrown or kicked. Sometimes he would jump up and down in our bedroom so forcefully plaster dust would scatter through the living room downstairs, and he even once cracked a major support beam. He'd drink himself into a coma, and the next morning we'd get awakened by our mother looking all forlorn. "Your father wants you to come downstairs. He feels awful about last night." Even when our father apologized, he made it about himself. How bad he had it as an orphan, how he never really wanted to have children because he knew this would be the result. My mother, who worked as a counselor at the shelter for raped and battered women, was in complete denial about the monster in our own midst. I suppose because he wasn't beating us with his fists or abusing her the way she would hear about how other kids and other women were abused, she figured we were much healthier in comparison. I used to judge my mother for not protecting us more, and in my weak moments I still do. But having grown up in this world as an adult with kids of my own and with all the crap I put a lot of people through, people I supposedly loved, I realize how powerful denial can be. Now, we shift to the mental layer. Here we're not looking for emotions, but for thought forms, especially those that disempower or divide us. These are often subtle and habitual. I'm not good enough. They'll never accept me. People like that can't be trusted. Sound familiar? These thoughts aren't just bad habits, they are often defenses born from pain, internalized criticism, or outdated beliefs absorbed in childhood or past life echoes. So again, we journal. What are the self-limiting beliefs I carry? What critical or judgmental thoughts do I have about myself or others? Where did I first start thinking this way? Like before, we're not trying to fix anything yet. We're just observing, remembering, and allowing the truth to come forward. Next, the physical or biological layer. Finally, we turn to the physical layer, and this one may surprise you. In Coratopia, shadow work in the physical realm isn't about fixing your body, it's about your relationship to your body. Begin by listing all the things you like about your body, dislike about your body, or feel neutral or unsure about. Be ruthlessly honest. Do you judge your weight, your skin? Do you wish you looked different? These attitudes, often inherited from family, media, societal pressures, can reveal deep pockets of shame and disconnection. Even chronic conditions or body pain can be part of the shadow's manifestation. Not because your body is broken, but because your perception of it has been fractured. Shadow work in this layer is about reclaiming your right to inhabit your body with love and presence. This structured approach, emotional, mental, and physical, offers a powerful gateway into the soul's deeper labyrinth. And what makes Coratopia so special is that it gives players a mythic framework to do this real-world healing work in tandem with their in-game journey. As you face inner demons, rewrite ancestral scripts, and evolve your avatar, you're evolving your actual self. This is more than a game. It's a spiritual technology, a guided transformation. In our next segment, we'll explore the energetic layer, the hidden circuits of influence, karma, and subtle distortions that shape how we move through the world and manifest our reality. But for now, start simple, with emotions, thoughts, and your relationship to the body. This is the path of light work. But light work isn't all light. It requires courage to face what's hidden, patience to witness it, and love to integrate it. Shadow work is not just therapy, it's alchemy. It is how we become whole.
This integration of the shadow cannot take place and be put to a useful purpose unless one can admit the tendencies bound up with the shadow and allow them some measure of realization, tempered, of course, with the necessary criticism. This leads to disobedience and self-disgust, but also to self-reliance, without which individuation is unthinkable. A psychological approach to the dogma of the Trinity, Carl Jung.
All right, now we're going to go to the energetic body. Now we arrive. A layer that is both ancient and future-facing. It's where metaphysics meets embodiment, where esoteric wisdom meets psychological precision. In Coratopia, the energetic layer is mapped primarily through the 7 chakras, the energy centers along the spine known to mystics, yogis, healers, and modern spiritual practitioners for thousands of years. Each chakra governs a unique frequency of human experience, from security to sexuality, willpower to wisdom, compassion to cosmic consciousness. When we bring shadow work into this system, we begin to tune in to where our energies are flowing freely and where they are blocked, wounded, or distorted. Let's explore this step by step. To begin this work, we approach each chakra not as an abstract concept, but as an inner temple we can visit through meditation, journaling, and embodied awareness. We ask ourselves questions for each chakra. Questions that help us locate energetic shadows, emotional residues, and psycho-spiritual distortions. First up, root chakra, or Muladhara. The theme here is safety, survival, belonging, and grounding. The shadow signs are chronic fear, insecurity, scarcity mindset, and feeling ungrounded. So, ask yourself, do I often feel unsafe or unsupported in life? Am I always waiting for the other shoe to drop? Do I struggle with money, home, or physical health? Write freely about your relationship with safety and survival. If you feel chronically anxious or disconnected from the earth or your body, you may be carrying shadow in this root center. These could be inherited traumas, survival beliefs, or a disconnection from the ancestral line. Next up is the sacral chakra, the Svadhisthana. The theme here is emotion, sensuality, creativity, and pleasure. Shadow signs include creative blockages, sexual shame, codependency, numbness. So ask yourself, do I allow myself to feel and express pleasure? Do I feel shame around desire or emotion? Have I lost touch with my creativity? Free write about your connection to sensuality, joy, and expression. Look at past emotional wounds, especially in childhood or early relationships. Suppressed emotions or sexual repression are often stored here, blocking the flow of life force energy. Next up, we have the solar plexus chakra, and it's otherwise known as Manipura. The theme here is power, confidence, identity, and autonomy. Shadow signs include low self-esteem, control issues, rage, and helplessness. So ask yourself, do I feel like I have agency in my life? Am I often trying to control others or feel dominated by them? Do I sabotage myself out of fear of success or failure? This chakra reveals shadow in the form of power struggles, inner critics, and patterns of victimhood. Journal about when you first felt powerless. Explore your relationship to ambition, pride, anger, and confidence. So next up is heart chakra, and that's called Anahata. The theme here is love, compassion, connection, grief. Shadow signs include closed-heartedness, bitterness, isolation, fear of intimacy. So you ask yourself, am I able to give and receive love freely? Do I hold grudges or live with unresolved grief? Do I fear being vulnerable? This is the center of emotional alchemy. Shadow here often appears as heartbreak, we never fully processed, or a deep mistrust of others and ourselves. Ask yourself where your capacity for love and forgiveness is blocked or wounded. Next up is the throat chakra, the Vishuddha. So the themes here are truth, voice, communication, self-expression. The shadow signs include fear of speaking out, dishonesty, shyness, silence. Ask yourself, do I feel safe speaking my truth? Do I lie, either to protect others or to protect myself? Was I ever silenced or shamed for expressing myself? This chakra holds the shadows of invisibility and self-censorship. Journal about moments you felt unheard, unseen, or misunderstood. Express the truths you've swallowed. Next up, we have the third eye, or the ajna. The theme here is intuition, insight, imagination, and vision. Shadow signs include illusion, self-deception, lack of clarity, over-reliance on logic. Ask yourself, do I trust my inner knowing? Do I fear what I might see if I go within? Is my mind cluttered with overthinking? Am I a Gemini? This is the seat of the inner witness. Shadow here may manifest as denial of inner truth, spiritual bypassing, or fear of one's own intuitive gifts. Journal about your dreams, your fears of seeing the unseen, or your doubts in your intuition. Those are probably my biggest ones right now. Trying to figure out what's the difference between intuition and my own, ego desires. I'm learning one's louder than the other. You can probably guess which one. Alright, next up is the crown chakra. This is called Saharasa. And forgive my pronunciations for anybody out there who knows the actual legitimate pronunciations of getting them wrong. Please forgive me. So the theme with the crown chakra is divinity, unity, transcendence, and higher self. The shadow signs include disconnection from source, nihilism, spiritual arrogance. Ask yourself, do I feel supported by something greater than myself? Do I swing between spiritual inflation and spiritual emptiness? Do I try to escape the material world through enlightenment? Shadow in the crown can often be subtle. A quiet despair, a feeling of cosmic abandonment, or even a God complex. Journal about your relationship to the divine, whether personal, impersonal, or missing altogether. Like with all the other layers, you'll want to approach each chakra by 1. Identifying your current experience, your emotions, your beliefs, bodily sensations associated with each chakra's domain. Next, you'll want to do some free writing journaling around the chakra themes and your personal stories. 3, you want to notice triggers. This is a big one. What situations provoke imbalance in a specific chakra? 4, tracing origins. When and where these patterns may have begun. This is also a huge one. They're all pretty big. 5th is witnessing without judgment. This phase is about awareness, not yet transformation. Eventually, this shadow material can be alchemized through ritual, dream work, embodiment practices, and energy healing, all of which will be integrated into Coratopia as tools and quests within the game. But first, we see, we name, we acknowledge. Later, we will transmute and integrate. In the world of Coratopia, these chakras are not only part of the player's avatar, they are part of the whole world itself. Each chakra has a realm. Each realm has guardians, challenges, puzzles, and shadow beings to confront. As you clear a blockage in the game, you're working through the energetic layers in real life. It's interactive soul work. Think Zelda meets Jung, with a bit of mystic Mega Man thrown in. But the real treasure isn't external. It's the subtle shift when you recognize that emotion isn't the enemy, that limiting thought isn't who I am, that wound is the doorway to wholeness. I'll say that again. Your wounds are the doorways to wholeness. When we do this work, when we honor each layer of the self as sacred, we reclaim power over our inner kingdom. When we realize that the shadow never wanted to destroy us, it only wanted to be known.
In myths, the hero is the one who conquers the dragon, not the one who is devoured by it. And yet both have to deal with the same dragon. Also, he is no hero who never met the dragon, or who, if once he saw it, declared afterwards that he saw nothing. Equally, only one who has risked the fight with the dragon and is not overcome by it wins the hoard, the treasure hard to attain. He alone has a genuine claim to self-confidence, for he has faced the dark ground of his self and thereby has gained himself. This experience gives some faith and trust, the pistis in the ability of the self to sustain him, for everything that menaced him from inside he has made his own. He has acquired the right to believe that he will be able to overcome all future threats by the same means. He has arrived in an inner certainty which makes him capable of self-reliance. Carl Jung.
In following episodes of Gnostic Connection, I will be bringing in people to discuss shadow work and their own experiences doing it, their challenges, their trials, tribulations, and triumphs. If you are an experienced shadow worker or a therapist or a life coach who what I'm talking about is very familiar to you and something you have been using and you would like to come onto the show and discuss with me how you practically use shadow work modalities, please reach out to me. My name is Damien Sebouhian. That's Sebouhian. And you can email me at KLLG, and the email address here is 979klLG@klLG.org. And I look forward to hearing from you. This has been the Gnostic Connection with your intrepid metaphysical detective host, Damien Sebouhian, talking to you from KLLG LP 97.9 Willits, California, Willits Hometown Radio. You can hear episodes of the Gnostic Connection every Saturday morning at 11 and Monday mornings at 10. From my heart to yours, may we all be loving, wise, powerful, and free.